Hi, myself Manjunath from the Department of Electrical and Electronics Engineering of KLSVD IT Haliyal welcomes everyone for this session on the subject testing and commissioning of the power system apparatus, which is an elective for the 7th semester having the subject code of 17EE752. In the previous session, we started with the installation process of the underground cable, and afterwards we came to know about laying of a cable and the different methods that are there for laying down the cable. In case of the installation, we have seen the preconditions that are to be followed during the process of the installation. Those are like the planning, the completion of a civil work as well as structural work, and need of a skilled labor. Then we have seen some of the guidelines which are required to follow the process of installation according to the manufacturer guidelines, or maybe according to the Indian Electricity Act of 1956, as well as the specification for the particular specified the underground cable which is under the installation process. Then afterwards, we've seen the precautionary measures that are to be taken out during the process of installation. Those are: the cable should not be bent as we like it. That is, since it is the thickness or maybe diameter of the cable will be much more higher than the normal cables. If you are going for the underground cables, if it is bent at right angles to each other, there will be a stress that gets developed at the joints, maybe the bending part. It may cause the breakage, or maybe the discontinuity of the conductors, or maybe the failure of insulation takes place as such. Therefore, the cable should not be bent at certain angle as such. And afterwards, the other precautionary measure is while laying, check the seal which is provided at the two ends of the cable before the laying out, because that if your sealing is not provided at the both end, it might have absorbed the moisture content. It may cause a damage when it is commissioned. That's why before installing it is to be checked out. Then afterwards, the keeping the cable in a proper rack. If you are using as many number of more than one or two or five cables in a trench at the time, the cable should be properly placed in the proper rack. Then afterwards, you are seeing the different types of laying, that may be the direct laying in the ground, direct laying in the ducts, or maybe in the racks, and inside the tunnel, as well as the along the building structure as such. Therefore, these many types of laying we have seen it. Then afterwards, the choice of the laying of the above methods used depends upon the installation condition where we are going to install this one, as well as the cost of installation. Then also it depends upon the maintenance and repair of the cable, as well as its replacement, what you have seen in the previous class. In this class, we are going to see the meaning of a trenching. What is the trenching means? That is a cable trenching. Then afterwards, you are going to have a jointing of the cable and the termination of the cable, what we are going to see in this class, or maybe session. Then after the class, the student should be in a position to explain the different process that exists in case of the cable trenching, then how these cable jointing can be done, and how that the underground cables terminations are done to have the proper reliable operation and provide the continuity of the supply to the respective the utilities, or maybe the consumers from the substation, or maybe the station or the generating station in the particular area as such. Especially much care should be taken in case of industry. Wherever they have the fault occurs, that part of the fault that occurs in case of the cable should be removed out, then the cable joining can be done as such. Now we'll go one by one. The cable trenching. A cable trenching is a method of laying a cable into the ground. As we have discussed the laying of the cable in the previous class, once knowing the cable, which method is to be followed, or maybe the direct method, or maybe drawing system, or maybe solid system, for all those things we require a trenching. Therefore, the cable trenching is a method of the laying a cables in the ground by digging the trenches, It depends upon the standard, depends upon the capacity of the cable. It may be digged at a little bit deeper, or maybe at maybe 1 or 2 feet below the surface of the earth. It depends upon the number of cables which has to be laid down. If it's only one, then specific rules are followed, as we have discussed in the previous class. The cables are submerged underground via the trench and are then covered by a layer of earth, the bitumen or concrete. Now here, once the cable laying is done, maybe cable trenching is done, depending upon the number of cables, those are placed in a proper way, or maybe in racks in the trench. Then afterwards, this is covered by a layer of the earth, the bitumen or maybe concrete. The cable trenching is also known as underground cabling process. Cable trenching is also called as the underground cabling. It has become a popular method of installing the cable. Now trenching is a popular method. There is no other means of which we can install the cable. That's why we call them, all of them, as the underground cable. The different known methods which are used for trenching, we can see that the excavation is done with the help of a manpower, that we call it the manual excavation. The second one is excavating with a mechanical force, or maybe thrust bore, or maybe trench plowing. That is, 4 methods are there. We can use any method, depends upon the distance. If the distance is very less, using the manpower, that is a manual excavation, can be done. That is, depends upon the depth of a trench. If the depth of a trench is required more, depends upon the number of cables that you want to lay it at the time. Any other method which is feasible and economically viable, that method can be used for the trenching of the cable. That is, the trench which is required for the cable. Above the methods, only first 2 methods are possible in the cities and towns, where there is a risk of damage to the other properties existing underground. That is, as I said already, that depends upon the different conditions. Either I can go for economical way, or maybe see the environmental condition. That what we say, that what the specification say, that the different types of the excavation can be depends upon the climatic condition and the place where you are going to have the trenching process. Only about 2 methods are mainly used, because in the cities it becomes very difficult to use the other methods, that like thrust bore or maybe trench plowing. At the time, it may cause a damage to the underground the system of the planned city. That's why the first 2 methods are used. However, the final choice would depend upon the type of a ground to be excavated. If it's hard, if it's not possible, the manpower, at the time I need to go for a thrust bore or trench plowing as such. That's why the excavation or the cable trenching, the cable trenching, it depends upon the local area condition as well as the economic viability. It depends upon the type of a ground to be excavated. That's about that. Okay, next, after knowing that the cabling, maybe the trenching, once it is laid down, as well start operating properly, where we get a supply, and the generating station or a substation provide the proper supply to the utilities, or maybe the consumer as such. After having the aging of the cable, there may exist some sort of the breakdown in case of the underground cable. At the time, it is essential to find out the fault as well as the removal of the fault, and afterward that the jointing can be done as such. Jointing can be done. Now, in case of here, termination means once a cable is laid down, either side, to provide the proper supply from one place to other, a termination has to be done. That's why it is very important to have the first termination, then afterwards is the cable jointing. Cable jointing comes whenever the cable gets damaged. Unless it is in working condition, the cable will not get damaged. First of all, you have to go for a termination, then that is once the cable is laid down, either side a termination has to be provided. In the case of this one, a termination means the connection of the two ends of the cable to supply point, one towards the supply point, other towards the utility point. That is called as termination. As the UC cables, power cables is important part of the electrical system. As you know that, everyone knows that once it is connected, it becomes a part of the electrical system used for distribution purposes. Normally, we never use the UC cable for transmission purposes, because the transmission will be over the length of more than the 50 meters or 60 meters or maybe 100 meters or maybe sometimes in terms of kilometers. If you want to transmit the electrical power using the underground cable, it is possible, but in the economic consideration, it is not viable at all. It is not viable at all. Hence, the great attention is to be paid for jointing of the cables with much care after the laying of the cable or in event of puncture of the cable. If the jointing is not done properly, the maintenance becomes risky. Further damage may occur to the complete cable. That is jointing, as I said already, the jointing comes after the termination first. That the jointing or maybe breakage of the cable takes place once it is under proper operation, and after aging, due to the fault occurrence, it may cause the damage to the cable at the time the jointing comes into picture. But if this jointing is not done properly as such, the maintenance becomes a risk factor, and further it may cause a complete damage to the UC cable or maybe underground cable. Therefore, the emphasis should be laid on the quality and the selection of the proper cable accessories. Much importance is given once the cable get damaged. If you want to have the jointing, the quality work is to be done. Therefore, the importance will be given to the quality and the selection of a proper cable accessories, proper jointing techniques, and the skill and workmanship of the working personnel. All the things has to be considered for a proper jointing. If anyone is not taken care, the jointing becomes improper. Automatically, once again, that after a few days or a few months, the same joint may burst out or gets punctured. Once again, repetition of work takes place as such. That's why we give a much importance for a jointing as with the certain above factors. The quality of the joint should be such a way that it does not add any of a resistance to the circuit. The one more point is to be considered is when you have a jointing structure in the middle of the cable, that should not add the additional resistance. When you add the additional resistance, automatically the losses will be more, and at the receiving end that you may not get the proper voltage level, automatically the regulation part will be much more higher as such. The materials and techniques employed should give adequate mechanical and electrical protection to the joints, as it is a common factor that once it is jointing is there, it has to be the adequate. It has to provide the mechanical as well as electrical protection to the complete cable as such. The joint should be further be resistant to the corrosion. That is, whenever you provide the jointing, that should not corrode with the place where you have installed the particular space. and its chemical effects. Now we'll see that what are the good qualities of the joint. It should not add any external resistance into the circuit. What we already said, that the additional resistance due to the jointing will cause losses. Hence, the voltage at the utilities may not get a proper value. The material and the technique used should provide the mechanical and the electrical protection to the joints under all service conditions. Joint should be resistant to the corrosion and other chemical effects. Now, these are the good qualities. Let us see the preparation for jointing. Now, what are the precautions or maybe preparation that has to be done for jointing? Plastic covers should be kept ready to protect the cable against the dust, rain, and the moisture. Now, that is, first of all, you have to find out the punctured, the cable area where the cable is punctured. That cable has to remove out, and certain part has to be cut down. Then afterwards, the complete cable should be removed out. Not complete part cable, that is the part which is punctured out, it should be removed, but from the trench and brought outside, and that area should be covered with a plastic cover, so that the cable should be, the cable ends where you have made a cut to have the joint should be protected against dust, rain, and the moisture. Cable compound heater should be kept ready and compound placed properly. All the requirements which are required for the proper cable jointing or maybe axle should be kept ready before the starting of the jointing. Avoid the collapse of the pitch with a proper method of avoid the collapse of the pit. The employee should always use the hand gloves while they are working with the jointing. That is, they have to, the precautionary measure, safety of the personnel should be done as such. All other accessories should be kept ready like pliers, hacksaw, scissors, glow lamp, and heaters. All the accessories which are required should be kept ready before the starting of the jointing. The precaution necessary for jointing. The reliability of the cable installation is totally depends upon the care taken while laying the underground cable in its position and skill of jointing work. If it is done with a great care, the cable will be able to give a good service for more than 15 years. If the jointing is done according to standard with the skilled labor as well as the good quality accessories at the time, it can provide a good reliable operation for more than 15 years without any maintenance practically. Therefore, technically skilled laborers are needed for the process of jointing. That following point should be noted while jointing. Care should be taken to keep the joint clean and dry while joint is being made. No time should be lost after cutting the cable for making the joint. Once if you cut punctured cable, immediately jointing can be done or may be started. Otherwise, moisture will enter into the cut cloud cables. It will cause unwanted disturbances because of the enter the moisture. Cable jointing work should not be carried out during the rainy condition. That is important as such, because when you open up a trench, the water gets into the particular trench, it may cause the further damage to the other cables which are laid already in the particular cable. That's why the jointing should be avoided during the rainy season. But inevitable, sometimes it is essential. At the time, much care should be taken for jointing in the rainy condition. The paper insulated core should be covered with a dry tape as soon as it is stripped off. That is, since the paper, if you take a paper insulated cable, that is, it always tries to absorb the moisture content. Hence, in the insulation tape, the dry tape has to be provided to avoid the entry of the moisture content, so maybe dust particles. This about the. Then, impregnated tape should be applied over the soldered cores to the thickness twice that of the paper insulation. That is, as I said, that the always avoid the entry of the moisture content and the dust content into the cable as well. That's why the impregnated paper should be applied over the core. All the moisture content at the joint part should be removed completely by before making the cable jointing. Even sometimes because of the negligence, there may be a small amount of moisture content maybe at the end of the cable that has to be removed out. After all the above, the cable should be checked for its continuity. Once the jointing is done, the continuity can be checked with the help of the megger or maybe any of the equipment which is available, so that once it is properly commissioned, it has to provide the proper supply to the utilities as well as the consumers. The types of jointing are, the types of cable jointing methods are as follows. It may be a straight through joint, T-joint, or sometimes also called as a broad joint, termination of the sealing, termination or sealing as such. This is about the let us come to the termination. The termination is, I think first I would have covered the termination. Termination means once it is laid, connecting the cable at the either end. So one, it is towards the distribution from system and other towards the utility system, or maybe sometimes a generating system to the switchboard to the utility system as such. The electrical cable termination is a physical and electrical connection of the cable and that connects to the another cable. That is, it may be to another connection cable to the, or maybe between the to the consumer side as well as the other towards the substation side. To the terminal of equipment. The cable terminations are often designed to enable the physical and electrical interconnection of two cable ends, or cable ends, a terminal on the equipment. That is a jointing, maybe jointing is totally different from termination. Termination, stripping off the end and connecting towards the one end. The electrical connection requirement relates to the voltage drop, the current carrying capacity, compatibility of the material, etc. The physical requirement relates to the environmental protection as well as the mechanical security also. The methods used to terminate the cables vary according to the type of the cable. We have a different variety. Single core cable is there, multi-strand core is there, 3-core cable, 3.5 core cable, 3-core, 4-core cable. We have a different variety of the cable with a different capacities. Therefore, the termination varies from one cable to the other, or maybe according to the type of the cable. The type of a connector and its application. That is, for each of the cable, the connector will not be the same as such. We have that lugs, what you call the lugs, electrical lugs. It may be made from the aluminum or maybe the copper lugs. You can use it. But those depends upon the capacity as well as the square mm capacity of the cables. The common type of terminations are the crimp the connection, soldered connection, the compression termination, and wire wrapped connection, direct connection, loop or eye connection. Some of the other factors that determines the types are outdoor or indoor, depends upon the type of a termination, depends upon not only some other parameters you've seen it, that also depends upon where you're going to install it, whether it is the outdoor or maybe indoor, voltage, the current, overhead, whether it's overhead or maybe underground, type of a connector on the equipment where the cable is to be connected, will be connected. Now we'll see the procedure. The end of the conductor should be prepared in such a way that the ends are easily suitable be connected with the terminals which these are to be connected by a mechanical means. All bare conductors and terminals for conductors and terminals for termination should be easily accessible and similar metallic conductor should be used. The method of termination varies with the different types of the cable. Method of termination varies with the different types of the cable. Now this is about what you call it as the termination as well as the jointing. Now one more thing is here it becomes very difficult to have show the video or anything, the supplementary part of this requirement here. That is better to have Google through the methods of cable jointing, whether maybe single core cable or multi-core cable. That is going to looks better. That's why we require the physical classes so that we can share all the things as such. It becomes very difficult to just writing the things, they connect this one, have the length of the cable. It becomes very difficult to explain in case of these things, and the videos are very much essential to know how the jointing can be done, or maybe termination can be done for a different variety of the cable, and which are the different types of work which are available. Maybe probably I'll try my level best to insert those information in the coming classes as such. Therefore, in this class we came to know about the meaning of a trenching. The trenching method depends upon the number of cable to be laid down. It may be according to the specification or the guidelines which is given by the manufacturer has to be followed. Then afterwards, there is a jointing as well as a termination. This completes the today's session as such. This completes this today's session. Above topics comes under the level of remembering and understanding. For all the above topics, you can better refer. There the standard book is available. Cable IS standard book is available. That also you can refer it. That is IS standard which is available is Code of Practice for Installation and Maintenance of Power Cables up to and including 33 kV rating. IS code is IS number 1255 of 1983 That also you can refer it. That some information you can get it in that particular IS standard book. Other topics you can go to the textbooks which is mentioned here, may be written by S. Rao, as well as the oral chapters also can be used. Thank you.